Okay, so our animation will consist of 4 main stages. The light color begins red, then the light fades out, then the light will change to green, and then the light will fade out again, and that sequence will be played repeatedly. The duration of the animation, as we can see from the timeline, is 6 seconds, and we want to move the time slider to the first frame in the animation at time 0, and we want to insert a keyframe for the light color and brightness track to lock in the starting values for the light color and brightness of the animation. Let us select the light color track and press enter on the keyboard, and that will insert a keyframe into the light color track. You can see the keyframe here marked by a triangle icon, and whenever I click on that triangle icon to select the keyframe, I will see at the bottom left of the perspective viewport here, adjust key 0, and that tells me that keyframe 0, this first keyframe, is selected. I'm going to insert an additional keyframe for the brightness track. I select the brightness track and press enter on the keyboard to insert a keyframe for that track as well. Okay, now from 0 seconds to 1 second, I want the light to remain red and to remain at a constant brightness. The brightness of our light is 6. So at time 1, that is 1 second, I want the brightness of the light to remain at 6. But between 1 second and 2 seconds, I want the brightness of the light to fade out to 0. So let us select the first brightness keyframe at which the brightness is 6. Select that keyframe and press Edit, Duplicate Selected Keys from the menu. And here I have created a duplicate key. Hold down the Control key on the keyboard and click and drag this keyframe to the 1 second position. This means that at 1 second the brightness of the light is still 6. Let's select this keyframe and duplicate it again. Hold down the Control key and move it to the 2 second position. We know that at 2 seconds the brightness of the light should be 0. So let us right click that keyframe and choose Set Value from the context menu. Let us change the value to 0 and click OK. If I drag the time slider across the animation between 0 and 2 seconds, I'll notice in the perspective viewport that the light, or the brightness of the light, changes. It now animates, or rather the brightness of the light changes between time 1 second and time 2 seconds. At time 3 seconds, I want the light to fade in again, but this time for the color of the light to be blue. So let us select the brightness value at 1 second, where we know the brightness of the light is 6. Let us select Edit and Duplicate Selected Keys from the context menu and Control drag that keyframe to 3 seconds. This means that the brightness of the light at 3 seconds will have returned. We can see that the light color at 3 seconds is still red, and we're going to need to change this. We're going to change it to green. But we're going to do that afterwards. We're going to control the brightness aspect of the animation first. Between 3 to 4 seconds, the brightness will remain constant. It will remain constantly green. So let us duplicate this frame again and drag that to the 4 second mark. Between 4 and 5, the light, the brightness of the light will fade out. So again here at this keyframe, that should be, let's just check set value, that should be 0, and it is. Let's duplicate that keyframe and drag it to the 5 second mark. And finally, between 5 seconds and 6 seconds, the brightness of the light will return to its default setting. Let's select the first frame, duplicate that, and drag it to the final frame, like so. The brightness for our animation has now been configured. The next step is to configure the light color for the animation. Now we have created the keyframes for the brightness of the animation, and we can see those keyframes here. It is time to create the keyframes for the light color track. These keyframes will animate the color of the light. Now, for animating the color of the light, we need to insert 2 additional keyframes. Let us use the time slider here, and we're going to scroll, keeping an eye on the color of the light in the viewport here. We're going to scroll to the 2-second mark of the animation, and at 2 seconds we will notice that the light extinguishes completely. Here is the point at which we want to change the color of the light from red to green. We want to do it here because we don't want the user to be able to see the color of the light change from red to green. Rather, we want the light to remain red, to fade out, to change to green here, and then to fade back in as green. So the change between red to green needs to happen here at 2 seconds. So I'm going to select the light track and create a keyframe here by pressing the Enter key on the keyboard. Now, just to make sure that this keyframe is at exactly 2 seconds into the animation, I will right-click on the keyframe and choose Set Time from the context menu. And almost 2 seconds, but not quite. I'm going to enter in a value of 2 here and click OK to set that keyframe to exactly 2 seconds. Now, to change the color of the light at the 2-second mark, we will click on the graph button in the light color track here to display the color values of the light in the curve editor at the top here. These values control how the color of the light animates or interpolates between the keyframes. Right now we have the first value for the first keyframe, and here we have the value, the color of the light at the second keyframe, and we have a straight line between them telling us that the color doesn't change. We want to set the color of this second keyframe to green, so we'll click this node in the graph editor, right click on the node and choose Set Color from the context menu, and from this color picker that appears here we'll choose the color green and then click OK. You can see in the curve editor here that it produces a set of curves that changes from red to green, and we can see the effects of this. If I scrub between the 0 second to the 2 second mark, you can see that the light color red changes to green. Now that is not in fact what we want. We don't want the gamer to be able to see the change in color. We want the animation to reach the 2 second mark and to immediately change to the color green. To do this, select the color at the first keyframe, and from the toolbar here, choose the constant button. When I do this, the red color will remain constant until the next keyframe. So that will cause the color green to be assigned to the light immediately at the keyframe at the 2 second mark. There will be no interpolation between the keyframes. So if I change from the 0 second mark to the 2 second mark, I will see that the light never changes to green. It just fades out as we want. Now the light fades back in again at the 3 second mark, and it is green as it should be. It fades out at the 4 second mark, or starts to fade out, and is completely extinguished at the 5 second mark. At this stage we want the light to change straight back to red. Again, we want no interpolation here. Let's select the first keyframe, which is the red color, we'll duplicate that keyframe and control drag it to the 5-second mark. Right click on it to set time to make sure it's exactly at 5 seconds, and you can see already from the curve editor here that there is an interpolation between the keyframes. Select the second keyframe, the one that is green, and from the toolbar select the constant again to ensure that there is no interpolation. If I now reset the animation back to the beginning and I click the play button from the toolbar here and I watch the results in the viewport, you will see that the color changes as we intend. So now the light animation is completed. What remains for us now is to set this animation going as soon as the level starts, and to make sure that the animation keeps looping or repeating for as long as the gamer is in the level. Now that the animation has been defined in Matinee, we can close the Matinee editor, and the process of playing the animation when the level starts and ensuring that it plays continuously on a loop is work that needs to be performed in Kismet. I'm in the Kismet editor here. I open that editor by clicking the Kismet icon on the toolbar. And I want this Matinee animation here to play when the level loads. To do this, I'm going to add a level loaded event. I'm going to right click in the Kismet background and choose New Event Level Loaded from the context menu. The event that I'm interested in here is the beginning of level event, which will be fired when the level begins. I'm going to connect this beginning of level socket to the play socket of the Matinee node. Now if I was to run the level as it is now, the Matinee animation will play only once and then stop. I want to ensure that when the animation is completed for the first time, it will then play the animation in reverse. So I'm going to connect the completed socket to the reverse input here. But once the animation is played backwards or in reverse, I'm going to want it to play forwards again, so that effectively the animation loops by ping-ponging backwards and forwards. So I'm going to connect the reversed output, which is fired when the animation has finished playing in reverse. I'm going to connect that back to the play socket up here. I'm then going to close the Matinee editor, and I'm going to play this level in the viewport here. Whoops, no, that's not what I want. I mean this button here to play in the viewport. And I can see already that what we've achieved here is a light that changes color. And notice that the animation is continually looping backwards and forwards. It ping-pongs, it plays forwards, then it plays in reverse, and then forwards again. And that completes our tutorial. I hope you have found it helpful. Thank you for watching.